What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the grow tent. This is where all the magic happens. This is my indoor grow tent where I grow all of my own food aeroponically all year round. For those of you that are new here, I am new to all things aeroponics as well as gardening, so I'm excited to share a little bit of my experiences with you all. It's officially been 2 years since I've started this journey, and one of the first things I started growing were tomatoes. When I first started this grow, I knew nothing about aeroponics, let alone growing tomatoes. My goal in this video is to share some of the experiences I've had growing tomatoes over the last 3 grows. When I started my first grow, I really had no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I wanted tomatoes and I didn't like the ones from the grocery store. There are so many ways I went wrong in my first grow. The first mistake I made was using polyurethane sponges with the hydroclay, similar to the peppers and cucumbers. When I first started, this is the way I decided to do it. I'm not really sure what I was thinking or why I did it this way.
This was the first time I had ever grown tomatoes and aeroponically. Same as the cucumber and peppers, I put them in a polyurethane sponge surrounded by hydroclay in a 4-inch net pot. Considering this was my first grow, I think I did a pretty good job. Despite all the mistakes I made, I still got quite the yield. At this point in my journey, I knew nothing about pH, ppm, CalMag, pruning regularly, proper air circulation, and how to optimize the environment. But somehow I still got tomatoes and they didn't taste bad either.
There were so many takeaways from my first grow, one of which being pruning consistently.
During my first grow, I really dropped the ball and let my plants get completely bushy.
I did a really bad job at staying on top of pruning my tomato plants. They got so wild and it wasn't long before I got powdery mildew everywhere.
This is what happens when you neglect your garden for a couple of weeks.
I also knew nothing about checking my pH or my ppm.
Toward the end of my first grow, it became pretty evident I had some kind of nutrient deficiencies in these plants. I also did quite the pruning hack job when I found out they had PM, so they were quite bare.
At the time, I also didn't have any additional fans in the grow tent, so I had really poor air circulation. Towards the end of my first grow, I started to learn the importance of harvesting tomatoes at the right time to get the best flavor. When it came to my second grow, I wanted to get fancy and try some new heirloom tomato varieties. Although the tomatoes still grew in the aeroponic system, I got a really crappy yield. And when it comes to tomatoes, it's important to select the right variety that's suitable for hydro or aeroponics. There are 2 different types of tomato varieties. One is referred to as determinate, whereas the other is indeterminate. Indeterminate tomato varieties continuously produce throughout their life cycle, whereas determinate varieties set fruit once and then they're done. If you're looking for a variety that's a heavy yielder in hydro or aeroponics, you're going to want to choose an indeterminate variety. But during my second grow, I didn't realize that these heirloom tomatoes were determinate, and so I only got a couple tomatoes out of the several months I was growing. And yet again, I didn't learn my lesson in the first grow, and I did a really bad job at pruning, and it wasn't long before I got powdery mildew again.
These heirloom tomatoes were fun to grow in theory, but weren't super practical for the aeroponic system. Even though they flowered like crazy, I really didn't get much fruit after so many months of growing. Out of 5 plants, I think I got a total of 4 tomatoes. These heirloom tomato varieties are supposed to get extremely large, but were stunted in growth in my system. It was probably because I neglected my garden for a period of time and I wasn't giving it the proper nutrients. From the beginning of the grow, these tomatoes weren't in the best shape and they clearly had a calcium deficiency. I also tried to hand pollinate them to see if it would encourage fruit production, but I had no luck. I'm still wondering if the variety was the cause of this or if it was because my environment wasn't optimized and my nutrients were off. Even though I didn't get much of a yield from this grow, it was fun growing new varieties while it lasted. I learned so many new things during this grow. I even learned what a mega bloom is. A mega bloom is more than one ovary fused together, creating a mega flower on a tomato plant. These often require hand pollination in order to produce the fruit, and when they do, it produces a Frankenstein of a tomato. This was the product of my Mega Bloom.
By the time it was my third grow, I was ready and set up for success. I had a pH pen, a ppm meter, oscillating fans, a pruning schedule, and proper grow mediums. I also learned from my last grow that it can be really easy to overwater tomatoes, and if they are overwatered, it can really affect the flavor. This is the first grow I've had where I've significantly reduced my watering schedule, and my plants are thanking me for it. Sometimes it can be tricky because the symptoms of overwatering are similar to underwatering, so it's easy to mistake them. A sign that your tomatoes are being overwatered is that when a tomato fruit is developing, it will develop a crack down the middle, meaning the tomato is receiving more water than it can take. This is going to substantially affect the flavor of your tomato. Another thing I've been doing differently this grow is to leave all the suckers on my plants because they are fruit bearing. In my previous grows, when I did keep up with pruning, I would cut off all the suckers. Even though some of these things may seem obvious, I am a new grower and I am still learning.
This here is my current grow, and rather than using any sponges, I just used hydroclay in a 4-inch collar. I would be using foam collars right now, but I didn't have any 4-inch ones. I've done this a couple times now and was trying to speed up the growth, so I was definitely more aggressive with the nutrients during this grow. However, in the early stages, I was overwatering my plants. Their initial watering schedule was 15 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and I reduced it to 20 seconds every minute. As soon as I reduced it, the tomatoes that were already growing were doing better, and the leaves on the plants looked less droopy. I've also implemented a disciplined pruning schedule once a week. Even though I leave all the suckers on my tomato plants, I try to keep them a certain height and not as bushy. While I'm trying to maximize my yield, I'm also trying to optimize air circulation. I'm grateful for all the mistakes I've made in my previous grows because all of the things that I'm applying to this grow are finally taking effect. I'm seeing so many positive results from all the improvements I've made. I've even been having fun with using my grow tower as a cloner for my tomato plants.
My goal is to share all my experiences with you guys and take you on this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're into all things indoor gardening, aeroponics, growing your own food, or just good vibes in general, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, follow me to learn more.